Good morning, everybody. I wasn't really planning on filming any more of this lengthy, mind-numbing oiling, sanding, oiling process, but I did have a few thoughts that I thought might be valuable to some of you out there. This stock is, well, kind of like they say in experimental aviation, that building an airplane, it's 90% complete with 90% to go. When you think it's almost done, it still has quite a bit of work, and you probably can't see in the screen. It looks gorgeous, doesn't it? But there's still a lot of open grain pores that still need to be filled and sanded back down, and I'm just going through the process. It'll probably finish out about 40 or 50 applications of oil. The reason I use the term coats, I'm not quite sure that's accurate, because we're not really putting a coat on so much as wiping the oil into the pores of the wood and trying not to leave any on top. I like to heat the stock up to help cure the finish so that I can get many coats done in a day. If you leave it in a cold shop, like my shop was quite cold this morning, it may not be dry by the next day to be ready for another coat. But if you stick it on the dashboard of the truck in the sun, or just outside in the sun, or in front of the heater in the wintertime, and get it good and warm, it'll help cure the finish quickly, so you can maybe get as many as half a dozen or more applications of oil a day. That said, however, you don't want to apply the oil to the stock when it's warm, because it will start to gel and get sticky before you're finished applying to the whole stock. And especially in the early stages when you're using a paintbrush and putting it out really thick and then wiping it off with paper towels, if the stock was warm when you start that process, by the time you're ready to start wiping it down, it's already gelling and getting sticky, and you end up with kind of a mess. So heat it up to cure the finish, and then let it cool back off before you apply the next application of oil. Now, after maybe half a dozen of coats, it's an easy word, it's not really accurate, but after half a dozen applications with the paintbrush and the pores are really starting to get filled, and you've done several sandings through that process, it reaches a point when you use the paintbrush that there's areas that don't seem to want to take the oil. It almost looks like it's matte in some places, and you have to go back over with the paintbrush and try to hit those spots. As that increases, that's one of your visual cues that it's time to switch from the paintbrush to applying with a folded paper towel where you can rub it in. And remembering our goal is to fill the grain pockets, not build up finish on top of the wood. This is a significant improvement over the kind of commercial finishes you might get on a wood stock, where the finish is built up over the top of the wood. I think they probably spray it in like a rock and roll machine, which is what they kind of machine they call in plastics manufacturing. That's how they make kayaks, for example. Plastic kayaks is they pour the plastic beads into the mold, and then the mold has an electrical element, or it goes in an oven to heat it up and melt the plastic inside. And then the rock and roll machine, it tilts the kayak this way while it's rocking, and it or even spinning all the way around. That might be how it works. And I think they must do something similar with gun stocks in mass production, where they spray a thick, heavy coat on it and probably do something like a rock and roll machine while it cures, so that it's evenly distributed. But you know what it's like to fix to repair a ding or a scratch in a stock like that, because if you sand down that local area of the scratch, you first sand through a mile thickness of finish, and you end up with a crater in the finish. And actually, the only way to refinish a stock like that is to sand the whole darn thing down. Not refinish, but I mean repair one spot. It's to sand the whole thing down. And so that's one of the advantages of a hand-rubbed oil finish, is there's no oil, cured oil on top of the wood. It's all in the wood. And then if you get a scratch or a dent, it's easy to steam that out or do a local repair and just apply oil to bring its appearance back up to the rest of the stock. In any case, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on too much. So to do the paper towel application, which is going to be 90%, there's that term again, of the work after you finish with a paintbrush. It's all going to be with applying with paper towels. So I use Scott Blue shop towels. They are relatively lint free, but they can shed fibers from their edges. So what I do is I cut it in half one way, and then fold them in half and cut them the other way. These are fantastic scissors, by the way. I think it's a Wiss. The name was ground off because I got these through an aircraft supply house, maybe Wix Aircraft Supply or Aircraft Spruce and Specialty probably sells them. They're intended for cutting Kevlar, which is why I have them. But wow, they're fantastic scissors. If it can cut Kevlar, it cuts things like paper towel easily, very easily. So I've got them cut into 4 squares now. And I take one of these squares and fold all the exposed outer edges in. So there's a fold here, come around, a fold here, again, and again, and then I fold it in like that, so I've got a little package with no exposed edges. They're all folded inside. And now I can use this for 4 different applications. 1, 2, 3, 4, typically. Alright, let me get my oil jar open here. So, yep, I think you're going to be able to see this okay. Adjust that up a little bit. Yes, I need to vacuum and clean this up. This is not really all that smart, having all that sanding dust right here that I didn't clean up. You get any sanding dust in your finish, you're doing another sanding down on the stock before you may have been ready for it. And I'll probably clean that up today. I've just been super busy. It is turkey season. Went out yesterday, scouted a new piece of property. Oh, and I got a horrible case of poison oak. Yeah, look at that, huh? Both arms, both legs. Oh well, it's life in the outdoors. So anyway, what I did here is just put the paper towel over the mouth of the jar, tip it upside down. The longer you wait, the more oil you're going to get soaked into the paper. It doesn't take much more than what you saw me just do. And I want it to be soppy wet, because at this point I don't want to have to wipe anything off. I just want to wipe this on. Now, the how frequently you have to re-wet the cloth will be based on how filled the pores are. When we're nearly at the finished point where most of the pores are finished, and even to the point where they're all filled, pores finished, not finished, filled, one dampening of the cloth will be enough to go over the entire stock, because it's basically not taking any more. That's not quite accurate. There are no more pores to fill at that point. But at this point I still have a lot of pores, so I'm having to frequently re-dip. And I can see here, you're not going to be able to see in the video, but I can see where it starts not really laying any material down. And so I have to re-dip. If you see, try to look at it at an oblique angle to the light so that you can see if you have a little thick area. I did just there. I saw a little thick spot, and so I wiped that over again. It just makes it a lot easier when it comes for the next sanding. And in fact, if you allow a particularly thick spot to occur and let it dry that way, well, there's just no sense putting more oil on top of that. You are at the point where you've got to do a sanding. And I'm probably doing a sanding every 6 to 10 applications of oil at this point. Earlier in the process, it's the first thick coat of oil that goes on, it gets completely sanded off. And then the second and third coats are also sanded after each application of oil, because we're really at that point working on removing sanding scratches. Once all the sanding scratches are gone, you can't see them anymore, then you can switch to maybe 6 to 10 applications of oil before doing another sanding. But if you do much more than that, you're going to really cause yourself a lot of work on the sanding. I think the viewfinder still shows my hand moving back and forth. Yep, and now just going to hit the top of the forearm. You want to make sure your cloth isn't too rich with oil doing the top of the forearm and cause it to leak over the edge and create a ridge. And in fact, after doing this, I like to just do a little wipe and make sure that I didn't squish an undue amount of oil over the edge. Now, if, summertime, it's warm, you just can't get the stock as cool as it is right now. It may be that you've gone over an area, and then you're like, oh, it's a little rich in one spot, and try to go over it again, and it's already starting to gel. The cloth is going to be sticky. It's going to make the finish look weird. I'll just re-wet the cloth and work it into that area that's already dried. Maybe that whole section, just go over with the fresh cloth. It'll soften, re-liquefy the stuff that was gelling on the stock, and then, very quickly go with maybe even use one of your unused areas of the cloth to get any excess wiped off before it starts to gel again. And then the other clue that's going to tell you that it's time to do a sand back down is if you're picking up lint in the finish, you start seeing dust and little lint fibers starting to get caught in the finish. Well, you don't want to keep adding a ton more oil on top of that and just cause yourself more work, because you know that lint and that dust is going to have to be sanded off. So you may as well do it, now rather than waiting until you got another half a dozen coats on top of that stuff. You're going to have to sand through all that to get rid of it. Anyway, this is, hopefully today I get maybe 6 or 10 more applications of oil on this, and I still think we're probably several days away from having all the pores filled. But when we're done, it's going to be an absolutely mirror smooth surface with no grain pores, or very few at the least. There's every project has a good enough point, and you got to decide where good enough is for you. And this is already better than most custom gun stocks or walnut gun stocks on factory guns that you'll see, which are typically still have just a ton of open pores left. And one can choose to just stop wherever you want. Everybody's good enough spot is different. But if you stop before the pores are filled, then every year after a hunting season or target shooting season or whatever you do with your gun, is do a sanding and a re-oiling. And if you do that a couple or 3 times a year, every year, it spreads out that work process. And, maybe after half a dozen years, you end up with something where all the grain pores are completely filled. I like to just power through it. Just get it done is kind of my attitude. Heat it up, get it cured, cool it off, put another application on, heat it up, get it cured. Just do that, half a dozen times a day, and just really just get it done. Don't be mamby-pamby about it. If you end up doing 1 coat a day or one every 2 days, it's going to take you forever to finish the project. Then maybe you lose interest in it before it's even finished. So that's kind of my attitude. And look how gorgeous this is. I hope you can see in the shop light. Turn it over and get the other side here. Look at this yellow color on top. I hope you can see that. This yellow color is just so cool. And the way it ended up carving is we see the grain that was intercepted as equally spaced curved lines right over the center of the comb. And that was a little bit of luck that it came out like that. The way this blank had been cut, if you look on my website, you'll see the initial pictures. I had this curve going the other way because that's how the wood miller thought that blank should be used. So the blank was roughed out with the curve going this way, but it actually put the grain going through the pistol grip in a weak direction. So by flipping it over like this, we got the grain going straight through the pistol grip. I hope you can see that. If you look at your own stocks in your gun collection and see how many of them where the grain goes straight across the wrist in a weak direction. Now, we've repaired a lot of gun stocks that break that way, either under recoil or being dropped or a little bit of mishandling. But when the grain goes sweeping up through the wrist like that, that is just as strong as you can be. Yeah, this is gorgeous. This is why I like doing the work. Can you see this figure in the forearm? That wrinkled wood look? Just tilt this around a little bit. I'm not sure it'll pick up in here in the shop lights. Which, by the way, are 4-foot LED shop lights. Fantastic. Every shop I've had, you turn the lights on in the shop and there's this incessant hum from the fluorescent ballasts and the fluorescent lights vibrating at 60 hertz. You turn these LED shop lights on, the shop is silent. it's so cool, and about a third the cost, or I probably worked that math wrong, but significantly cheaper than running fluorescent lights. I'm really liking it. And then the color temperature, there's a number of different color temperatures you can get, and this is 5600 is warm. This is cooler and bluer than that, and I don't remember what number it is, although I could tell you if you really want to know and mention it in the comments section. Talking about the comments section, I really want to thank everybody that has been commenting and hitting that thumbs up button for me. That's a huge help. And subscribe to the channel, and if you hit the that's a big help, right? That's the metric Google really wants to see. And if you hit the bell icon, then you'll get a notification in your email every time that I post a video. And I'm really grateful for all of you that are tuning in and watching. I see some of the other gunstock making channels have thousands of subscribers and hundreds of thousands of views, and I'm hoping I'm heading that way. But if not, I'm grateful for those that are tuning in. And the reason I'm doing this is, well, one, to provide another way that I can communicate the work with my clients. I used to only do pictures on the website, but now with video I can talk to you and tell you what I'm doing, and that really, I think, helps people understand why it's not all that cheap to have a custom gunstock made. It helps them value, I think, it might help people value the work involved in making a custom gunstock. It's not a push a button, my duplicating machine. It's manual. It's not a push a button CNC thing, and maybe that means I'll be a failure in business. This is kind of more at a hobby business right now. I'd like it to become my full-time gig. But the CNC stuff, that's really expensive, and you see how those stocks look. Like Manelli in Italy, those CNC cut gun stocks that are coming out on a lot of air guns these days, they're nice, but they all have a not hand-worked feel to them. They all have a computerized look and feel to them. With what I'm doing, I make masters with Bondo. The curves are organic and they're hand done. They flow nicely. And then the hand finishing that we do, where we can really work these curves and fine lines. And sometimes by doing handwork, with the computer, you're just going to get the lines wherever the computer drawing or file said that they should be. But when working by hand, we might find there's a line of grain there, and this is what I did here, is I worked this after duplicating. I hand worked this curve to line up with that sweep of that grain. Just little details that the end user may never key on, but I think collectively all those little attentions to detail and custom kind of aspects to it add up to the result. People go, wow, that's a gorgeous gun stock, and may not key in on all those little details that make it look like a gorgeous gun stock. So that's one of the real advantages of handmade custom work. But I'm preaching to the choir, right? You all get it. That's why you're here. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. Like, share, subscribe. Comment, please. Hit the bell button. Yep, that's all the standard rhetoric. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you soon.